When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
The Flushing Girl from Flushing, the nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
Miss Fine.
Hey, everyone. Welcome back to Oh, Mr. Chef Pod, the podcast where we talk about the nanny. I am Shanti Pasquale here with
Toria Sheffield. And actually, the podcast is called Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
What did I say? Oh, Mr. Chef Pod?
You called it Oh, Mr. Chef Pod.
That's what our social handle is. I'm just trying to do it all at once. Yeah, the podcast is called Oh, Mr. Sheffield. The social media is Oh, Mr. Chef Pod. Let's get it out of the way now. We are here. I'm 5 cups of coffees in. It is season 2, episode 18, The Nanny Behind the Man. Mm-hmm. Incendiary title. This episode was directed by our old pal Lee Shalal.
I guess after Randy got the boot,
they were like, "Randy, you're the weakest link," and they sent him home. And then this episode was the story is by Rob Lauderstein and Ellen Idelson, and then it was written by Jerry Perzigian. And for some context, more fresh blood. Rob Lauderstein is a writer. He's primarily probably known for No Show That I Remember or have heard about. And then Ellen, it looks like they're writing partners because all of his credits she's also credited on for the most part. So I think they probably worked together a lot. And then Jerry, who wrote the actual episode, he did the Jeffersons. He did 48 episodes of the Golden Girls as the supervising producer. He did 34 episodes of Hope and Gloria, which was a show that I truly enjoyed as a kid for some weird reason, even though it was definitely not geared towards my age range at the time.
Well, so that's really interesting to hear because I did not love this episode, and it was no discredit to the episode. It had some very sitcom-y trope things happening that I just don't like and that always irritate me, and some sort of internal sitcom-y logic where certain characters are getting mad at certain other characters for things where I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. It just feels like you are like creating conflict because you need conflict, but not because it actually logically tracks.
I completely agree. This was such a weird episode. The pacing was weird. But some of the writing was weird.
A lot of, you know what? It was very classically sitcom in the things that bothered me. I think that, and I don't think we do that as much anymore because we need a little more like grounded in reality logic, even in our sitcoms these days.
It was just a very silly episode, but I'm always happy to have more Grandma Yetta. So it wasn't a complete loss.
Well, so this is the episode where Mr. Sheffield tries to woo a very, very elite playwright.
Dakota Williams.
Yes, away from Andrew Lloyd Webber and Fran.
Which Dakota Williams is clearly a Tennessee Williams reference, like thinliest veiled Tennessee Williams.
No. But you know what? I was thinking that, but Tennessee Williams is like famously a gay man. And this man is a womanizer.
True, but I still think the name was like a nod of Tennessee. I mean, Dakota Williams.
I think he's an amalgamation of a
Tennessee Williams and William Shakespeare.
No, I thought I was also trying to think like, okay, who is he modeled after? I think he's an amalgamation of a certain type of American author and playwright who were these, incredible wordsmiths, but also very kind of masculine and, drinkers and got into bar fights and doesn't really exist anymore except for people who just put on the affect of wanting to
I think
be
you're
like
totally
this.
right.
But I will say this, there was I had an audible gasp moment in this episode at one specific joke, but I'm not going to reveal it yet.
Okay. Ooh,
I was so disgusted by it. But we'll get there.
There were a lot of things that made me laugh in the second half of this. A lot of Yetta stuff really got me good.
Well, yeah. And so I wrote, wow, we start with some deep cuts to President Clinton in this episode.
Well, which pays off later. None of that has anything to do really with this episode at all, because this episode is really just about, Fran and Mr. Sheffield trying to impress this writer who they want to poach. Again, weirdly, they are trying to poach him from Andrew Lloyd Webber. The show's like really setting up a rivalry between Mr. Sheffield and Andrew Lloyd Webber, but more so than they've even done.
Would imply that Mr. Sheffield is in the same league as Andrew Lloyd Webber. It's more that he's constantly bested and infuriated by Andrew Lloyd Webber.
Yes.
Yes. But we said that he's vying for the rights to the same play as Andrew Lloyd Webber, written by a famous fictional playwright named Dakota Williams. And Cece's like, just give up now. You're not going to get it. You never get it when Andrew Lloyd Webber's in the mix. And Fran's like, no. Like, you should fight for what you want. And I'm going to help you. And that's the crux of what happens.
Yeah. We learn pretty early on that, first Fran says, what does Andrew Lloyd Webber have that you don't other than a middle name? Which for the first time in our experience, at least with this show and IMDb, an IMDb error actually pointed out a correct goof, which is that
that's in my trivia, but it's okay, we can go over it now.
It is?
We can go over it now, but we'll go over it now and we'll just harken back to it later.
Well, so she says Andrew Lloyd Webber has a middle name meaning Lloyd, but that's actually not his middle name. He's Lloyd Webber is his last name. His name is Andrew Lloyd Webber. But then we learn that Mr. Sheffield's middle name is Beverly.
It's just so funny. Why is it so funny?
It's so good. Maxwell Beverly Sheffield. Really got a chuckle out of me.
Me too.
It did. It's so stupid, but it did. So he's basically stressed that this Mr. Williams is going to show up, and there's no one. He really wants to impress him, and he's like this Southern drinking guy, and
like a Hemingway who has lived a raw life and is gonna want he's not gonna want some tame boring dinner party.
So Fran's like, I'm gonna set him up with a friend. Like, I know the perfect person to set this guy up with. And
I know, like, she's a drinker, she's crude, she's lived a life. Like, we don't want to set him up with some lame vanilla model type. And also, quick B plot is that, which is not really a B plot, it's more like a C plot, but we don't really have a B plot. Maggie says that a geek at school named Clifford offered to help her with her PSATs, but she, quote, can't be seen with him. And I wrote in parentheses, is Maggie secretly a worse person than Brighton? Because we've at least seen some fun, redeeming qualities about Brighton, and I at least probably enjoy his company because he's pretty funny. Maggie likes boys and then is horrible.
Right, those are her two personality traits.
Yeah, she'd be so boring. But Fran, I love this though, because Fran tells her she should definitely accept the offer, because she goes, here's the trajectory. Pocket protector, software genius, compounded Malibu. Which just reminded me, my mom always goes, geeks make the best husbands.
Yeah.
She's always warning you not to be wooed in by a quote cool guy.
It's true. It's true. Listen, we're great, us geeks.
Well,
then
lines.
We get some very weird dialogue where they say the phrase take a powder multiple times. Like Mr. Sheffield or Cece goes, oh, Nanny, fine, take a powder. And then Fran gets all worked up about something and Mr. Sheffield goes, Miss Fine, take a powder. Do you know this phrase, take a powder?
I was thinking like a smelling salt kind of thing to calm down.
No, it's so weird. So it literally just means like leave. It means take a powder. It means like get out of here. Quick departure. A quick departure, and especially to avoid a difficult situation.
I'm actually looking up right now. It says Take a powder comes from 1929 and refers to taking a headache powder. The compressed pill form of an aspirin came later. The idiom developed from suggesting that a person take a powder and go lie down. It morphed into take a powder and go away and just go away.
Crazy. Anyway, It just stuck out to me as like a very weird line for these characters to be saying.
Okay.
It's so dated.
Now that you're pointing it out to me, I totally agree. I kind of blew past it thinking it was like, just something that was a blind spot for me. But knowing this, very weird.
It's so weird.
And then the playwright shows up.
It's George Murdoch. George Murdoch was a very well-known character actor. He's mostly known for playing judges. He played a lot of judges on he played a judge on Judging Amy. He played a judge on That's Life. He played a judge on Law and Order. I vaguely recognized his voice, but couldn't place him. Even looking at his IMDb credits, I was like, I don't know where I know this guy from. So then we get the reveal, obviously, the woman that Fran has decided to set him up with is Grandma Yetta.
And Grandma Yetta comes in and goes, sorry, I'm late. I had to dig out a brassiere that tied in the front. It looks like it's going to be a complete mess. But then he takes a real liking to Yetta. They bond over being old. It seems like they're big, gross. Yeah, they're drinkers and they're gross, and they are literally just comparing their disgusting moles with each other.
They hit it off, and so Fran, of course, is like, "Hey, look, see, I told you I could do this." And Mr. Sheffield's excited, and he starts calling Fran his right arm. And then we get the reveal at breakfast, that we're at the breakfast table, that while it seems like this is a home run, Mr. Williams hasn't actually finished a play in a really long time, and Yetta has learned that he has writer's block.
Yes. Well, and just for some context, so it's like when Yetta shows up, she and he hit it off, and then they go off to dinner. We don't see the dinner, but we do cut to breakfast the next day, where it's revealed through what's the word I'm thinking of? Exposition, that it was a greatly successful evening. And actually, this was the line that I audibly gasped at, where Yetta comes in and starts eating breakfast, and she's like, "Oh, it was so great. He was so wonderful." And then Fran goes, "You didn't go under the table and quote, look for something that you dropped, did you, Yetta?" Insinuating that you didn't go do anything gross with him during dinner. And then Yetta goes, "Just once. I just wanted to see I still had it." And Mr. Sheffield goes, "That was you?" That's when I gasped. Because first of all, just so shocking. Does that mean Yetta has fondled Mr. Sheffield's junk? And then I was like, well, he wasn't, as far as we know, he wasn't there with a date. So who did he think was fondling him? And then that is through all of this conversation, that's when Yetta's she reveals, she doesn't even know she's revealing it. She just happens to mention that, he has writer's block, and Mr. Sheffield had purchased the play with only the first act finished, assuming a second act would come. So all of this, resounding successful planning was actually to buy a play that will never get finished. And then Mr. Sheffield's furious at Fran, which this is when I started to get annoyed, because this is a recurring theme in this episode, where Fran helps him get specifically what he wants, and then he finds out that there's a reason that he actually shouldn't want it, and then he's mad at Fran. And she's never like, "Yo, dude, you didn't know that he had writer's block. I didn't know he had writer's block. Why?" And again, it happens in the reverse later. And I just was actually very annoyed on Fran's behalf, and annoyed that nobody called out this, obvious logic.
They needed conflict, and so they manufactured conflict. But then we get so many funny Yetta lines in a row, where she first they say something about I forget what the setup was, but it was basically something about someone old person with dementia, and Yetta goes, "All right, well, I'm gonna head out into the gift shop," and she just leaves the dining room.
She goes, "Thank you for introducing me to him. Most guys my age are senile.
Right.
All right, I'll be in the gift shop. She walks out into the living room because it's also established earlier that whenever she stays over at the Sheffield, she thinks she's at a hotel or a resort.
It's so good. And then they pay it off because then when they cross into the living room later, she's literally just holding one of the like items from their counter, and she's like, I hate when they don't put price tags on anything.
Yes. And meanwhile, Mr. Sheffield's really upset at Fran because she helped him acquire a play that ultimately is going to be a disaster. And she's like, well, wait a second. She's like, he decided to work with you because of Yetta. So like logically, if Yetta breaks up with him, he might back out of the deal. And so they go off into the living room and they follow Yetta. And at first, Mr. Sheffield's like, wait, no, I can't do this. I can't have her, break up with someone who she might actually have a shot at love with, just so I get out of this business deal. And Yetta's like, wait, this was all just business? I was just used as a tawdry sex toy. Why does this always happen to me? But then she goes, I'll make you a deal. And she goes,
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
And she goes to Fran, let me talk to your husband in private. Because she's always under the impression that Fran is married to Mr. Sheffield. And she just says, I know. And she takes him aside and she goes, I'll give up Dakota if you quit fooling around with that blonde. So clearly she thinks that not only is Fran married to Mr. Sheffield, but that he's having a affair with Cece. And I was like, you know what? That's actually very selfless of Yetta, if that is in fact what she believes is happening.
It's funny. It's funny line. Yeah. She also says earlier in that scene, I'm an entrepreneur.
Yeah. She goes, I get it. Business is important. I myself am an entrepreneur.
An entrepreneur.
Yeah. And so, she says, she basically agrees. She's like, okay, yeah, I'll break up with him if it's a business thing. I get it. And then we have a quick scene with Maggie again. And Maggie looks super depressed. And she basically tells Fran, they're sitting in the living room, and she tells Fran that this, quote, nerd who's been had the audacity to help her with her PSATs, actually asked her on a date, and she doesn't know what she's going to do. And she's basically like, she's like, my friend, I forget the girl's name, like my friend Callie, she's dating like the quarterback of the football team, and he is so hot. Like, I can't be seen with this geek. And then Fran goes, honey, let me tell you the progression. Football, pulled groin, your gut. Can I check your oil, please? So, which is just, it is so true. It's so honest. So, but basically saying like, hey, no, go for that geek because that hot guy is going nowhere. And so that's just, a little end to that little side plot. But so then,
by the way, Fran's outfit in that scene was insane. She's wearing like a skirt and like a top, and the skirt and the top are neon green, orange, pink, and yellow.
Yeah.
Like, it's every brightest neon color you've ever seen. It was garish, frankly.
Sometimes I love how you're either so no, I think I've realized the pattern after 45 episodes. You are not a fan of Fran's fashion in general unless she's showing a lot of skin. like you really prefer a more conservative sensibility, like in terms of like color palette and hair. But the times when she is in like a mini dress, you're like, Fran look great. No, she look great. So then we cut to Mr. Sheffield, who's very pleased because it turns out that, Yetta did in fact break up with the writer, and the writer did then break out of the deal. So, he thinks, crisis averted. Thank you, Miss Fine. Like, you are my right-hand man indeed. At which point Cece comes running in and she actually goes, I'm coming in and I have terrible news. And Niles goes, isn't that redundant? But so she reveals that, in the trades that day, it shows that Andrew Lloyd Webber bought the play, but Dakota had finished it in a single night, inspired by, quote, a recent heartbreak. And it says that it was like, Williams had departed from his usual heroines, this time his lead character being a down-to-earth, earthy Hebrew, what was it, Hebress? It was a funny word for Hebress, named Zeta.
Yeah.
So actually, Yetta breaking his heart cured his writer's block, resulting in him finishing the play that Andrew Lloyd Webber bought. And then again, Mr. Sheffield is furious with Fran. And I'm like, all she has done is get you exactly what you have requested every step of the way. Very infuriating to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, it was like out of her control.
Then we have one of the strangest cameos.
Oh man, this was so bizarre to me.
So then we just nothing really gets resolved. It's just, oh, ha ha ha, Mr. Sheffield's annoyed at Fran. And then she heads into they were in the kitchen. Now she heads into the living room and Niles announces that Mr. Clinton has arrived. And so Fran thinks it's going to be Bill Clinton. And she turns around and it's Roger Clinton, who nobody would know today. Absolutely nobody would know today. But he was, Bill Clinton's younger brother. They're half brothers, significantly younger. He was kind of in the mix in the way that like you'd often know who's in the first family, because there's sometimes that rallies, and
he was like the dopey younger half brother of the president who was like a failed actor. That's what he was known as.
Yes,
like
and and who never amounted to really anything.
No.
And in fact, I was like, why did he agree to be on this show? Because the next several lines are really just digs at him. Like at one point, Gracie's like, the president's here. And then she goes, oh. And then Fran's like, Gracie, honey, don't be rude and go get your camera. And she's like, but why would I want a picture of? And Fran's like, get it.
I mean, let me give you some context on this. So he was codenamed Headache by the Secret Service due to his controversial behavior. Okay.
And
in 2001, it was revealed that he had accepted a $50,000 Rolex watch from the children of a Sicilian mobster.
Yes, in order to try to curry favor with his
and get him pardoned. Yeah, it was the Gambino crime family. Like he just was like a joke. Then he got arrested for driving under the influence. Like he was just like the problem child of that family, whose brother then became president, and so he was like, hey, have me on your TV show. I mean, from 93 to 2000, he showed up in this show. He showed up in the Rugrats movie. He showed up.
And there's kind of, you get the impression that like he's never had consistent work and that Bill Clinton just kind of takes care of him.
Yeah.
Like financially. Like that's what I would guess.
Yeah.
And he basically says that he got the letter that Gracie wrote to that his brother got the letter that Gracie wrote, and that he was so touched by it that he thought, while he couldn't make a visit, he would send his brother out instead.
This also killed me because it's so pathetic sounding where he's like, his brother, it really just makes it sound like Bill Clinton was like, why don't you get out of here and go visit these random people in New York?
or like giving him a task to make him feel good.
And they didn't even, and what makes it even more weird is that like no one called ahead clearly. So it just seems like Roger Clinton just showed up at their house.
It was so pathetic. The whole thing was so pathetic.
Sad. It was.
And then Mr. Sheffield is there and he's like, Roger Clinton. He goes, Nanny Fine is a huge fan of your family. You should really ask for her assistance in 96. I think she could really make a difference in the campaign. And, Roger Clinton's like, well, I'll tell my brother. And then he leaves, and then Fran goes, "Oh, Mr. Sheffield, that was so nice of you. Did you really mean what you said about me?" And he's like, "I did." And then she's like, "And I thought you were a Republican." He's like, "I am." So the joke being that, like, I want you to assist the Clintons and help them lose because you actually are, completely terrible. Segments, because that's the episode. Bringing it out with Roger Clinton.
Segments. Let's do it. And now, segments.
So, segments.
Yeah, no, I think we should move on to segments.
We can move on to our segments.
And now, segments.
Segments with Sean and Toria.
What have you got? We got a good Yiddish this episode.
We did. I realized, even though I said that I didn't love the plot of this episode or the logic within, I have a lot of lines called out.
There were some good quips.
So when Yetta is bonding with the playwright, she goes, they walk in on them talking mid-conversation. She's going, "For 30 years, I thought it was a beauty mark. Then I wake up one morning and it's the size of Danny DeVito." I love that we find out Mr. Sheffield's middle name is Beverly.
Yes.
So Mr. Sheffield initially thinks that this Yetta thing is going to be a disaster. So he's like, hauled Fran into the other room and he's yelling at her. And Fran's like, well, he was smiling when he met her. And Mr. Sheffield goes, "Well, he's drunk." And then she's like, "Well, Yetta's on tons of painkillers. Maybe neither of them will realize they're together." Which that's just something about it really made me laugh as like a potential hopeful solution to the problem. And then when Mr. Sheffield's like, he's like, "Miss Fine, like, why do you do this to me? Like, don't I treat you well? Didn't I give you a job when you needed one? Get you all the slim fast bars you could eat?" That made me laugh.
Yeah, I mean, I already mentioned a couple that I liked from Yetta. It was so dumb, but I really liked Cece going, "C'est la vie," and Fran going, "La vie." Yes. You mentioned the Cece saying, "I'm coming in and I have terrible news," and Niles going, "Isn't that redundant?"
There's also a very funny little beat where after Yetta has charmed the playwright and then the playwright goes in the other room, Yetta turns to Cece and she goes, "It's all in the body language. Watch the walk." And then she starts to walk into the other room, sort of hunched over, unsteady, the least sexy thing you've ever seen. And Cece then authentically tries to mimic it.
Yes.
Which I think was a beat that did not get enough time to breathe.
I agree. It was very funny. It further reinforces how pathetic Cece's life is.
Yeah. So those were some of my big highlights.
Mm-hmm. So now the Yiddish word.
It was, so I think we probably got the same one. Unger Bluesen Punam.
Yes.
Unger Bluesen Punam.
Yeah, Unger Bluesen Punam. Which Unger Bluesen is like, she says it in the episode. It's like a sourpuss.
Yes. And it's like a long face or a sad face. Sort of like, why?
Punam is face.
Yes, which you might remember from a previous episode where she calls a little baby a Shana Punham, which is like a little cute face.
Yes.
But she basically sees Maggie looking kind of bummed out. She's like, "Why the Unga Blues and Punham?" Or like, "What's with the Unga Blues and Punham?" Yeah. Which was a great one.
Great one.
And as I said, we already we covered the Nanny trivia, which was a goof, which I thought actually merited a call out. And as you said, Andrew Lloyd Webber. Lloyd Webber is his family name. Lloyd is not his middle name. And at one point, they even call him Andrew Webber, which they got it wrong a couple of times, which is only surprising in that, like, yes, they are a very savvy writing staff when it comes to musical theater, and it just kind of seems like something they would actually have known. It's one of the few goofs that I actually am like, it does seem like in the world of the show that they should have
known this. Yeah, I mean, I get Fran not knowing it, but you would think that the other two would know it.
Yeah, and then in terms of the Fran and the Cece, I wrote, can't decide for this one because I don't think they're really pitted against each other. But then I wrote, Sean, what's your middle name? I'm curious now. What is it?
John.
No.
Like Sean John, like Puff Daddy?
Your name is Sean John?
Yeah, like P. Diddy.
Are you kidding?
Like P. Diddy's clothing line. Yeah, it is. Sean John.
Sean John?
Yeah.
Sean John
Di Pasquale.
Wow.
Yep.
I never knew.
Yep.
Hey, Sean but you know what though? We have similar middle names. Mine's Jane.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Victoria Jane.
Victoria Jane.
Victoria Jane. Oh, you're almost like Victoria Justice.
I secretly am. That's exactly who I am.
Does anyone ever call you Victoria?
Sometimes people do. Usually it's people that don't know me that well. Or something like if I'm going to like put my name down at a restaurant, I just go straight to Victoria because it's just faster. People usually have to like clarify Victoria.
Right. What about Vicky?
Never. Never.
Wow. Very English. That was this episode. I am very excited for the next couple episodes, including my much anticipated lamb chop episode, which is in 2 weeks from now. The lamb chop episode. Very excited for lamb chop. I love that little puppet. If you like the show, please go to Apple Podcasts and leave us a review. 5 stars. That's the only acceptable amount of stars to leave. Tell people how much you like the show. That helps other people find it. You can also find us on social media at Oh Mr. Chef Pod, as we've previously mentioned. 2 F's in chef, by the way. And I just wanted to say that I'm very excited. We are almost done with this season, which is crazy that we've gotten through almost 2 seasons of the show so far. I'm excited to go into season 3. And yeah, that's it. I think that's it.
I think that's it. We did it. We done it.
That was a podcast, everybody. Have a good week, and we'll see you in 7 days. Bye.
Yeah. Goodbye.
The Flushing Girl from Flushing. The nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
Miss Fine.